All right, in the frame is a Sony, uh, maybe a TR6500. Well, anyway, that has nothing to do. Well, it does have everything to do with it. This is a Sony. It's a long distance radio. It was made like 1970. It has dome transistors in it. It doesn't have a FET front end. Now, there is a file on the internet that a person bought one of these and put it up against the Radio Shack unit that I always talk about that looks like this. Let's see if this will, if the cord's on. Okay, this unit here. This is the last model they made. You can tell by, it doesn't have a second slide switch. And it has an IC output for the audio. It doesn't have a push-pull like this has, and the older model of the Radio Shack. But what I want to tell you is, why does one work better than the other? And I mean nitpicky. You get the carrier and you can hear the person's voice a little bit on the Radio Shack, but on the Sony, you don't have the carrier or the person's voice at all. Even though the Sony has more volume, it has better sound. So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, that's strange, you know, because I got involved with the tube radios at the lake. The people, we tried every radio there was and this and that, and they tried long distance radios. And this guy came into the Radio Shack, and I'm telling him the story how I'm fixing these old Philcos radios for people at the lake. And it's a big lake community, and no other radios will work except old Philcos. Certain models they knew. So my father's bringing them home. I'm repairing them. So I'm in the Radio Shack, and I'm telling this guy the story, and he says, no, he says, you see that radio behind you? And I paid no attention. I didn't sell one. No one even looked at it. I turned around, and there was sort of the unit I just showed you, the Radio Shack unit. It's very famous. And I would say that's the starting point if you wanted to get into long-distance reception of AM broadcasts. Now, the newer digital radios work very well because they have a FET front end. That's the difference. All right? So the radios that have a FET front end, it works better, like a tube. So when I told these people this one radio might work, and the guy I bought one, I sent it home, they moved it around the lake, and everybody tried it, and it worked perfectly. That's what they wanted. See, they could move around the house with a portable. They could sit outside with it, because at the lake you couldn't, back those days there was no cable, there was no cell phones, okay? So, you couldn't get television, no television at all. No, anyway, all you had when you went on the weekend to the lake, past Vernon Valley in New Jersey. And I guess there's mountains, and it knocks all the signals out except on the Philco radios. And then I figured out, well, the guy basically said to me, have them try that radio. And he pointed to it. I bought one, took it home. My father took it to work. They passed it around. And then everybody started buying the Radio Shack radio with the FET front end. So you start thinking about, well, is it the FET? Okay, so the tube radios, the Philcos that they were using, have tubes. And the tube has a high impedance. So I figured out I'm going to draw it up in such a way that you probably will understand it. All right? And it all has to do with impedance. And I'll explain what impedance has to do with signal. Okay, this is a really bad drawing. I should have put more time into it. But anyway, right here, this is a tuning capacitor. It's directly across the loop stick. That's the long ferrite rod in the radio, right here. All right? This tuning capacitor that you tune for the frequency is directly across it. It has so many turns, goes right to that. It might have a fixed capacitor across it. It may have a trimmer so you can calibrate the radio. But basically, the tuning capacitor is directly across the coil's most windings. Then there's several windings which are in with these, and that goes to the first transistor, or in the FET radio, to the FET. All right, it's very simple now. I drew it in such a way, and someone say, well, you left out the resistors, or it really doesn't go to ground. This is effectively what the circuit is. On the transistor, regular transistors, or even germaniums, the impedance, they use a 0.01 capacitor. So the few turns of wire come in through the 0.01 to the first transistor and then to ground. So that's really low impedance, and I mean low resistance. Now, if you load this coil down at all, it kills this signal over here. It's called reflective impedance. So in other words, if you have to draw too much current over here on this coil, now this coil goes somewhere else. I drew it to be simple, all right? If you draw too much current here, that affects the primary. All right, it's that simple. So the old transistors, they used the 0.01 to couple this would be the base. And there's other resistors and stuff in it, but I simplified it. So a regular transistor junction to ground are effectively through the circuit. Say it's, we'll give it 500 ohms. We'll give it 500 ohms. All right. Now we come over to the FET. And the FET is coupled with 370 picofarads. Do you realize that's like 10 megahertz? 10 meg ohms or more. All right. So what happens is all the signal that reaches this ferrite core will come off and go to this FET. It doesn't get loaded. It does get loaded down in such an insignificant amount that it's laughable compared to the regular transistors. All right. That's why the FET is acting like a tube on the grid of a tube. And that's why the people up at the lake, oh, the Philcos will work. We've tried everything. And I'm coming along saying, well, give this radio a try. We tried all these different radios. I said, well, I bought the radio. My father's going to bring it up to you. I was talking to the guy who had just repaired the Philco. Try it. Just try it. And pass it around. So they did. So for about a week, they walked around the community with one of the stations on. And what they wanted the frickin' weather. Think about it, in those days, you're out at a lake. There's no cell phone. Some of them didn't even have telephones. Why would you have a telephone if you're only up there on the weekends? This is the way it was. And so it'd be nice to know if a storm's coming, all right? So they had these big Philco radios, and everybody knew, if you were at that lake community, that regular radios won't work. You could go out to your car, and even the car radio they weren't always good. They weren't always like a Mopar, a really good radio. But what the difference between a long-distance radio or a fringe radio is the first transistor in the RF section, or the first FET. When you get the signal comes from many miles away. It's actually on this coil. And this coil, when you have this right amount of capacitance and inductance, it actually resonates. And then you bleed off or siphon off a little bit of signal, and then it gets amplified, and then you work with that. But if you don't get the signals to start with, I don't care how many IFs. I don't care if it has digital processing. I don't care if it's got software defined. If it's software defined, and that's what's wrong with a lot of software defined radios. They have no real front end. So I don't care what you do with software. If the signal's not inside the radio box or in the box now, you're not going to be able to get it. And that's what I fight with SDR, software-defined radios. Those guys are in all the DX sites. Oh, I have this one. You never tried DX, and you don't even know what you're doing, but you're recommending a radio to people. But so what's the conclusion we come to? All right, so now we know the Radio Shack radios, the realistic ones. We'll call that the benchmark now. And then radios made after that, like what do I always tell you I use? It's down here on the floor. Radio, what the hell? Where's my flashlight? I put things back exactly in the right spot. I think they're called DX. The radio itself. Oh, now it's got to be far enough away I can't see. Oh, I can't believe this. A DX390. All right, that's the one I use. Now, the DX390 has a FET front end. That should tell you a lot. All right, I just got done explaining that's the way to go. Now, people, oh, you touch the radio and the front end FET burns out. Well, guess what? Almost every radio after a certain date has a FET front end. So these guys that are shooting with it, they really are annoying me now because I did the work to go look to see why. The impedance is so low on a FET that when you come in as the first RF amp, the circuit is not getting loaded down by anything. A FET has like really super high impedance, and you're coupling to the that would be not the base, that would be the grid, not the grid, the gate. It's coupled to the gate with a 370 picofarad capacitor. Now that's basically the same amount of capacitance in a scope probe, right? So that's why a lot of radios, the newer ones, actually do pick up AM broadcasts really well. That's because of the FET front end. If they have the RF amp with a FET and a nice honking size ferrite rod. This is pretty big on this one, right? That's what you really need. The big honking ferrite rod. Now the signal's picked up by the radio. It's in that ferrite rod. Now you gotta funnel it off to an RF amp to bring it up so the rest of the radio can work with it. And if you're using a regular transistor, you say, well, the FET's got more gain. Not necessarily. There are transistors, regular ones, silicon or germanium that have a lot of gain. The problem is it's an impedance problem. You got a signal, it's in microvolts, and it's traveling through the air, and you have to resonate a rod or a coil. It's a coil. You resonate it. Now at that frequency, it's really vibrating, and now you have to pull that energy off and then amplify it before you can mix it and add it to an IF section and then turn it into audio. All right? It's all about the FETs and the high impedance of the FET. And high impedance is basically, I just showed you, high impedance would be coupling the signal off with a 370 picofarad instead of a 0.01 microfarad. And a regular transistor, I don't care how you draw the circuit, it does have a resistor to ground somewhere, and that's really low impedance. With a FET, you look at the FET on your schematic, you'll see it's coupled to the turns, the pickup turns on the ferrite rod with a really tiny capacitor. All right, that's the secret. I don't know if anybody's done this kind of video before. I thought about it, I put the time into it, and I did the video. I think that's it. All right, that's it.